Have you ever noticed that the harder you try to control a situation, the faster it slips away? When we feel things spinning out of reach, our instinct is to grip tighter. Whether it's an argument, a crisis at work, or a physical confrontation, the default response is tension. We lean into our egos and try to force the world into submission through sheer willpower. But this creates a specific problem. By trying to force an outcome, we become physically and mentally rigid. This rigidity makes us heavy and slow to react, an obstacle to martial arts and mental peace. Before he became a global icon of calm, Bruce Lee was a hot-headed street fighter. In his teenage years, he was driven entirely by a defiant ego and a need to win. Growing up in 1950s Hong Kong, Lee was deeply involved in local gang violence. He was constantly looking for a fight, using martial arts to dominate others on the street. But his mindset had a physical cost. Because he was so obsessed with winning, his mind would become perturbed and unstable during a fight. As soon as he engaged an opponent, his theories on gentleness vanished, replaced by a desperate, frantic drive to beat the other person. That aggression made him predictable. By relying on force, he was becoming a fixed target, proving his ego was a liability rather than a strength. Lee eventually sought out Grandmaster Ip Man, a man who represented the exact opposite of Bruce's frantic energy. Ip Man taught Wing Chun, a style centered on simplicity and the total elimination of unnecessary movement. Ip Man addressed Bruce's ego through a specific, repetitive training method. He made the teenager practice a single stance for days at a time. This was designed to break his reliance on forceful, complex tricks, grounding him in basic stability. Ip Man's verbal instructions were just as direct. He told Bruce to calm the mind and forget about yourself. He wanted Lee to let the underlying reality of the situation dictate his movements, rather than his own deliberations. This was a process of psychological deconstruction. Ip Man was using these drills to wear down the boy's need to assert dominance, replacing aggression with a neutral, responsive state of mind. This defines the core principle of Wu Wei, or non-doing. It isn't about being passive. It is spontaneous action that occurs when you trust the mind to work by itself without interfering deliberation. To understand detachment, consider the metaphor of a mirror. A mirror doesn't have an ego. It simply reflects whatever is placed in front of it perfectly. It grasps at nothing. A rigid wall, by contrast, takes the full impact of a strike until it eventually shatters. This mental state allows thoughts and emotions to pass through without becoming sticky or blocked. By remaining centered and non-attached, a practitioner can respond to a partner's movements in real time without the delay of mental deliberation. This transition turns a practitioner from a stiff, vulnerable object into a highly adaptive, fluid system that is much harder to overcome. Despite these lessons, Bruce found himself stuck. Frustrated by his inability to force himself to relax, he eventually walked away from his training and took a small junk boat out into the sea to be alone. Out on the water, his frustration peaked. Angry at himself and his progress, he leaned over the side of the boat and punched the ocean with everything he had. He noticed something immediately. He had struck the water with all his might, but the water didn't fight back. It didn't suffer any hurt. It yielded to his strike instantly, then flowed right back into place. Water is the softest substance in the world. Yet because it is formless and moves without resistance, it can eventually penetrate the hardest substances. Lee realized that true power didn't come from fighting against his environment, but from accepting his nature and moving in harmony with it. He stopped trying to force the outcome and started letting the water show him the way. Lee integrated these principles into his approach to combat, but the Be Water philosophy extends far beyond the gym or the street. It applies to how we handle modern pressures and conflict. Emotional intelligence is often a matter of fluid adaptability. By letting go of the desperate need to control every variable, we actually gain the clarity to respond to them. When we stop resisting the currents of life, we find we have much more influence over where they take us. The next time you find yourself tensing up against a problem, think of the boat on the sea. What would happen if you stopped pushing and simply practiced the art of letting go? What would it look like for you to be water?